Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video, and this week is insane. BfA is almost here, time is running out for testing, and that is reflected in just how much damn stuff there is to talk about today. Now, before that, last week I did mention there'd be more about the game dev this week, and I'm pretty happy to announce that we're going to be starting our video series on the game development next weekend. It's going to be live on its own channel, so hit up Coffee Box Games on YouTube, and yeah, keep an eye out for us this weekend. We'll also kick off our tweeting next week, and you'll see a whole bunch of art there. And as the final bit of housekeeping, a massive thank you to everyone who's been checking out Before the Storm through Audible. If you're not aware, if you hit up my link in the description, you can get a free audiobook, which is actually narrated, funny enough, by Anduin Wryn's voice actor, and you can get that for free, and all that stuff goes right into the game dev and the team, so it's super appreciated. It's pretty great. You get a free setup, and we get to make a game. I think it's kind of awesome. All right, next, it is time. Yes, it is time for Tree Watch 2018 to come back. Today, though, all is not as it seems, and I wanted to mention this because, well, I think it's only fair given the direction that the speculation has been going in recently. So, some data mine dialogue has appeared, and basically Sylvanas is just talking about, her goals with the whole campaign. She wants to capture the city, she wants to control the flow of Azerite. In order to ensure a peaceful occupation, she wants to just crush the Night Elf military forces, kill Malfurion. Why? She wants the civilians to lose hope so that they surrender without a struggle, so less death. That seems decently sensible, and it does not involve the burning down of anyone's tree. This suggests to me that there is indeed quite a lot of mystery surrounding the actual burning. Is there foul play? Is it a setup? I mean, hell if I know, but Blizzard have quite recently teased big surprises over the coming weeks, and I'm pretty sure this is one of those big surprises. Next, let's talk about the pre-patch. So patch 8.0 just hit the PTR. This is a pre-patch for Battle for Azeroth, and that means we're really getting close to release. Now, the pre-patch is going to bring all the new systems for the expansion, bar those which require you to do expansion-specific content, so stuff like Heart of Azeroth. Now, when you log in, what you're going to find is that your artifact is the same item level, but all of its traits are disabled, and that's going to be reflected in the in-game story pretty much right off the bat. You'll also notice that your numbers are tiny in comparison to Legion, which is because the stat squish is in. Now, all the class changes are in, but they're going to be a little bit funky because the BfA classes, they're not really designed for 110, they're designed for 120, but that's something that happens with most pre-patches anyway. Now, all the content of the expansion will actually be there, but you will have to wait until they flip the switch on the 14th of August for, the BfA stuff to actually be unlocked and doable in-game. So the pre-patch itself is actually going to be really busy. The story that covers what happens to our artifacts is there, as does the campaign in Darkshore, the burning of Teldrassil, and the battle for Lordaeron, as well as the accompanying world content, which is partially a bit of a mystery. It's going to be really hard to live up to the Legion invasions, but at the very least it should be something to keep you a bit busy. But let's break out into a few more specific topics. And the first one is pre-patch war mode. In the recent Q&A, which I'll be covering just throughout this video, Ian mentioned that the war mode is going to be in the pre-patch and that there will be war mode specific content. This is actually the part of the pre-patch that I'm the most excited about. You see, player-generated content is so important in making a game just last over time, and this is one of the few ways that WoW might actually be able to capitalize on that. Now, I'm not going to re-explain war mode fully again for the millionth time, but effectively it's an opt-in world PvP mode in which you are phased into a PvP shard. When you're there, there can be specific war mode content. As an example, in BfA, crates fall from the sky, and players of both factions can fight for control of the crate and the loot inside. Well, considering how a full-blown war is happening narratively in the pre-patch, I'm just really excited to see what Blizzard would do here. Even if they put a couple, like, say, flag capture points in Darkshore settlements and maybe add a simple reward scheme, that's enough to create a territorial war. I mean, there's just so much potential to create a PvP sandbox, and wow, I really hope that this does well and encourages Blizzard to do more of it in the future. But next, let's talk about the state of classes, because, well, it's an interesting one. Now, I'm gearing up to start work on my BfA beta class review series. That's going to follow a similar format to my Legion ones, so I've been paying a lot of attention to the classes lately. BfA is so strange. First, though, I kind of need to take you back to the Legion beta. So Legion involved loads of revamps to specs. Blizzard knew it would be risky, and they started heavily iterating the classes super early. They did a lot of iteration over the test period. It's just been a bit different in BfA, though. Now, I think that they've pared a lot of specs down to their baseline in initially in the beta, and then they kind of left it for a while. And it's only in the last few weeks that we've seen a torrent of Blizzard's class feedback responses and then loads of changes being made in the beta. Thankfully, most of those are actually really good, but it's odd how late it's all happening. I mean, as of the time of recording, the PTR for the pre-patch is a build ahead of the beta, and it's just an odd situation where both the PTR and the beta are up, and we actually have class design iterations happening. Now, this all ties into the Q&A with Ian. He said that the window for changes, such as those that I recently covered to balance druids, that window is rapidly closing, so they're approaching the time where they need to de-emphasize large changes to classes and instead fully focus on getting the details right as well as balancing the classes. Ultimately, having a spec that feels a bit wonky design-wise, but is balanced right so that it's actually viable, like that is what they need to do for launch. So they're shifting the focus away from revamps and towards just getting everything working for launch. Now, Ian said the larger changes will be pushed back to 8.1, and he did mention Enhancement, Elemental, and Shadow as examples of specs that are probably going to have significant changes in patch 8.1. This means that we soon will be in a place where numbers aren't necessarily balanced, but the meat of the specs will be there, which is pretty much the point at which I'm comfortable to do the class review, because after all, the class reviews are focused on design and fun rather than flavor of the month performance. Now, it's going to be a very busy time though. This is all compressed into a few weeks, so yeah, stay tuned to the channel, I suppose. Next up, Mythic Plus. It is seeing really important changes in BfA. First up, you're not going to be able to swap out gear during a run, so putting on an AoE set for trash, ST set for a boss, not going to happen. This is even more important in BfA because so much of your character power comes from your Azerite gear. Now, for the most part, this is an extension of the existing Legion philosophy where you are not allowed to change talents during a run. So it does make sense, but there are kind of pros and cons. So you, just as an example, when you always have the right answer, then you never have a decision to make. You just do the right thing. So if you have 3 gear sets and macros to swap them, it's just a case of hitting a button before a pull, nothing more. You just always are completely optimal. There's no decision really. Now, when you have to consider an entire run at once and plan out your whole gear, do you want extra survivability, AoE, single target? That answer is going to depend based on the dungeon and the keystone, so there's more decision making there. Previously, you just used the perfect solution to every problem, so design-wise, I think this change does kind of make sense. However, it is also a blow to min-maxing, which is an ongoing theme. Blizzard do seem to want to lower the individual skill ceiling a little bit, make everyone a bit less of a superhero, but then kind of replace that with team coordination. I'd argue there's more to be gained by raising the skill floor, but that's kind of a topic for another day. And it also is something that hits specs slightly more that have extreme secondary stat balance issues, and that's not all different for Mythic Plus. They're also changing the pace of affixes. Fortified and Tyrannical are going to appear on Keystone level 2, which is basically the start of Mythic Plus. This has the effect of smoothing out the difficulty spike that is found on Keystone level 10, and I think that's pretty fair. It just means, a Mythic Plus that's just a few % more HP and damage only, that's kind of boring. Now, I did mention Mythic Plus 10 back there. Well, Mythic Plus 10 actually has a new type of affix that's called a seasonal affix. So they're in line with the raid season in terms of their pacing, and they're special affixes that persist throughout the duration of a season, and they're going to be tied into the current theme of the raid. So, as an example, while Uldir is the main raid of the game, there's going to be a new affix at level 10 called Infestation. It's going to cause certain non-boss mobs to be infested, which increases their power. Then killing one of those mobs will boot out the infestation, which is like an NPC that you've got to kill before it infests another another trash mob. So it's a prioritization challenge. Now the infestations are placed by hand, not by random, so you're not going to just get got by randomness. But the general idea here is that this makes the dungeons feel kind of different on a seasonal basis and brings in a bit of theme from the raid to them. As for whether it's good or not, I don't know. It seems like a cool idea. That said, if it is an affix that's just not fun, then having it there for a whole season is not ideal, but we'll just have to see how it pans out. Now also, Heart of Azeroth. So Ian clarified some of the Azerite systems, specifically the catch-up, which we all want to know a lot about. Now with Legion we had Artifact Knowledge, which essentially was automatic, and it buffed your gains to AP, which led to insane numbers by the end. Well, in BfA, a similar system is going to operate in the background, but it will reduce the AP requirements of our Heart of Azeroth neck by 30% per week. This is effectively the same thing as the Legion solution, but it brings the player-facing numbers, it just has them be a lot more readable because they're always going to stay constant, and the only thing that changes is that your requirement for a new level of your necklace, that's just going to go down, which means that, yeah, we're not going to end up with 8 billion as a number by the end. And next, let's talk about artifact transmog rules, because this is something that I think there's a lot of interest about. So they are going to be spec restricted, with the reason being essentially that it would break animations that specs are not designed to have access to. So to actually make them class-wide would require a lot of granular stuff. They are, however, allowing you to override your existing weapons with an artifact regardless of type. So a holy paladin who is wielding a one-handed and a shield is going to be able to transmog their artifact hammer on top of that. A fire mage with a 2H staff is going to be able to mog their fellow Malorn on. So that's definitely good. I know it's not as far as a lot of people would like to see them go, but that's what's up. So with that covered, let's hop over to some Q&A quickfire to just get through everything. So flight is the same as Legion. You can do it only with one faction, so there's no worries there about having to do Alliance and Horde. And in terms of easing up on things like WoD Pathfinder, no plans, but they are discussing it. On the topic of PvP loot, they just re-clarified there is conquest progression that we've already covered before, there is random rewards at the end of content, and then there's the weekly chest based on your arena or RBG performance. Now, the content launch plan for the BfA launch is pretty much the same as Legion in terms of the raids being staggered, how the item levels are working, that kind of thing. Cross-realm Mythic raiding is going to be allowed once 100 Alliance and Horde teams have cleared Mythic. Those people and anyone who clears it during the final lockout, they're going to get an achievement, and the top 100 will, for either faction, will be in a public leaderboard. And then Ian also just alluded to, again, the top end of Titan Forging being a bit toned down. And just as I finished editing this video, some WoW Classic news dropped, so of course, I'm back in the recording chair and we've got to cover it. World of Warcraft Classic is going to be based off version 1.12 of World of Warcraft. That's Drums of War, and the team believe that to be the most complete, all-encompassing vanilla experience of WoW, so that's what they're rolling with. Now, of course, the team has been hard at work working on this. It is a separate team to the World of Warcraft Legion and BfA development team, so totally separate. Well, maybe not totally separate, but they are separate teams. They've been hard at work at things. So what has happened? Essentially, they have given us a blog post, and that contains a bunch of information. Now, they initially started off by getting all the old code out of the archive, getting a build of it running, and they found, yep, we can run around, we can level, we can quest. Stuff doesn't work great though, and more importantly, there's a lot of stability issues with modern systems, and there's also a lot of challenges when it comes to getting this to work with Blizzard's modern server architecture, including how they deal with logins. Now, you can kind of, hack together a quick and dirty version of a lot of these things to get it to work for the sake of a prototype, but to get something that can be deployed worldwide for, I assume, millions of players, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So they needed to work out how they're going to respond to this issue, and they've decided to essentially do a lot of porting of the old game itself. And when I say game, I'm referring to its design, its abilities, all of that, across to their more modern backend. Now, that sounds right. Basically, if you don't really know how this stuff works in the backend, that might sound like they are doing something really massive, and it would be a lot of work, but it's stuff like their database structure now is better designed and more efficient. This is not the sort of thing that's going to radically change the game itself. It really won't change the game itself at all, and at any point where there is a slight mismatch in a value in a database, they can just quickly ensure that it is running the correct value. Basically what this means is that when a lot of the game is running off the more modern backend of World of Warcraft, and even things like how its databases work, that means that the code is more readable. The databases are more readable. They're easier to work with. It means that deploying hotfixes and just all that development work, that is a lot easier to do, a lot faster to do, and in such a way that delivers more stability for the end product. Overall though, World of Warcraft Classic, it's going to be on version 1.12 of the game, and it seems like they are going with the whole no changes thing. Maybe they'll polish up some bugs and stuff like that, but you're not going to see big changes to how the game works, which I think is what the core Classic audience really wants to see. Now, there is a slight conspiratorial sort of thing where it's like, well, they've sort of got this running the more modern system such that it's easier to develop new stuff. You'd kind of think, well, would this mean that it would be easier for them to move on to TBC, to move on to Wrath? The answer is absolutely yes. And I think that is something worth bearing in mind as being one of the benefits of doing all of this architecture work up front. So that certainly is food for thought. But there you go. That is a development update for World of Warcraft Classic. And yeah, let's get right back into the regularly scheduled video. All right, yeah, so that's the Q&A and the news for the week. A lot to get through. I hope I did it quick enough to keep it interesting. And yeah, we're so damn close to BfA. It's kind of crazy. We're like, what, 3-4 weeks away from the pre-patch, then past that, 5 weeks from the launch. And it seems like Blizzard have all sorts of surprises in store for us, which is pretty damn exciting. So check out the Game Dev Twitter and the YouTube. It's going to spring to life in due course. And if you're interested in a free copy of Before the Storm or something else from the WoW library, check out my Audible link down in the description, which also supports the channel and the game development work. Massive thank you to you for watching this video. Massive thank you to the team on Patreon for supporting us. It means a hell of a lot and really helps out. And yeah, let me know what you thought about the stuff this week. And with all that said, I will see you next time.
Mm-hmm.